Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hello, everybody at home, and welcome to Houselights, House of Coppola. I am your co-host, Tristan Riddell, and tonight we are talking about the first movie ever to win Best Picture Oscar that was a sequel, and that is The Godfather Part II. Now, with me, as they always are some two fine gentlemen, and one of these guys has seen The Godfather Part II many times, and that his name is John Mills. John, how are you doing?
This kid comes up to me. He's got a Ritz cracker and some liver, and he says, "Can of peas." I said, "Can of peas, my ass. It's a Ritz cracker and some liver."
I'll make sure to give you a graham cracker then with some liver.
That sounds absolutely terrible.
And then next up is a fine sir who has never seen this movie before up until now for this podcast. And his name is Darren Moser, a.k.a. Dr. Sci-Fi. Darren, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. You may notice in the camera, I look really, really young because this entire podcast, I'll be playing my younger self in flashback form. Yeah,
it's amazing. You look 25, Darren. It's crazy.
Oh man, that would be amazing. Yeah, Robert De Niro. He doesn't look like Robert De Niro. He is so young in this movie. It is almost hard to tell who he is. But yeah, first time watching Godfather Part II. We'll see if it lives up to the hype. But I did set aside a good chunk of my weekend to watch this film, guys. It has an intermission card. I mean, 2001: A Space Odyssey has an intermission card. So, geez, it was long.
Now, what we like to do with the show when we first start is talk about how we first encountered the movie. Now, Darren, this is your first time encountering it, so I'll move to John first. John, can you tell us, if you remember, how did you first see Godfather Part II?
Like I mentioned when we were talking about The Godfather, I bought The Godfather Part II for my brother. I knew he was a Godfather fan. I bought it for him for Christmas, and it was on the big clunky double VHS tape there. I will always remember the intermission because that was the break point between the tapes, and it was good to have a bathroom break. But it was I was absolutely gobsmacked. There are so many movies that have, they shape how you approach film and what you like or dislike. And, Batman 89, Star Wars, but The Godfather Part II, you could make the argument I was too young to watch it. Right. And, I think I was around 13 or younger. And, I was completely floored. And just as a side note about that, seeing it on a double VHS tape, this is a film that I use as an example for when you have format discussions, how truly great films don't care what format you watch it in. It works. It will work anyway. And I didn't see The Godfather Part II in its proper aspect ratio for many years afterward. And I can still remember what it looked like on the TV screen and all of that. And we didn't even have flat screens back then. And it just worked. And it still stands as such a huge cultural touchstone. It is mind-boggling that Coppola released this the same year as The Conversation and only 2 years after his first film, which was The Godfather. Like it's crazy when you look at the pure technical achievement of this film. So I'm sort of showing my hand there, I know, but yeah, like that very much.
I don't think it's going to be a secret how you and I feel about this film, but I'm aching to know how Darren feels about it. But before we get into that, I do want to say that, John, I know exactly what you're talking about. When I first encountered this film, if you listen back to our Godfather episode, you hear me talk about Dom DeLuise's Grillin' with the Godfather weekend on, it was either AMC or TCM or something like that. And I just got enraptured by these movies. It was during my birthday weekend. And I just kept, as we were setting up for 4th of July and everything like that, I would kept kind of peeking at the TV. It was just on and like sitting down and watching it. And after I got like most of those movies in, I went to my dad and I said, we got to go to the video store. I got to get these movies. I got to watch these movies from beginning to end without interruption. And we did. And I remember the 2 cassette clunky Godfather Part 2. And I didn't know what to do because they had Godfather 1, 2, and 3 on tape, but they also had the Godfather saga on tape. And I had no idea. And I was just like, I don't know what this is. And so I just grabbed it. And then I remember watching it. And I'm just like, I don't remember this order being this way. Like, I don't remember it starting this way. This is weird being in temporal order. But like, then I understood what was going on. It was the first, it was the first VHS and only VHS that I ever bootlegged.
Oh, wow.
Because back then, like, cassettes were, a lot of money, especially The Godfather. And I remember my dad had an old camcorder, like one of those huge over-the-shoulder camcorders that took a full VHS tape. Not Betamax, not anything else, like a full VHS tape. And so I hooked it up to the VCR and put Godfather into the camcorder and then recorded it on tape. I'm not proud of it. I'm just saying that it happened. And that was my first and only bootleg.
How fitting that you watched a mob movie and bootlegged, right?
I hope the FBI doesn't come after me for this one. I got rid of the tape.
Wouldn't that be great? I think maybe we've got our own movie we should spin up here where somebody 30 years after the fact, where's the VHS tape? Where's the VHS tape? Anyway.
But yeah, and like you, John, I was just blown away. I didn't know that movies could be that good.
Now, Tristan, you mentioned the saga version. Is that like a separate version that came out that changed it and put it in chronological order? So like the flashbacks you had from Godfather 2 was what you saw in the very beginning?
Yes, all the Robert De Niro stuff was its own movie shown at the beginning, and then you saw Godfather Part 1, then you saw Godfather Part 2, sans Robert De Niro.
But as an added bonus, they put in the TV scenes to it as well as some other additional material. So there's more Finucci in when I was growing up, it was called The Godfather, The Complete Epic. And then it turned into The Godfather Saga after Part 3 came out, but it was The Godfather, The Complete Epic. And they re-edited everything chronologically, and it was beautiful. It had extra scenes. It had more Finucci. It had, there's actually in the beginning of the Michael part of Godfather Part 2, when he's sitting in his study, when people are coming in and Connie's about to come in and talk to him and everything, you actually see him pull out a file and you flash over and you see him blow up the car that has the guy who assassinated Apollonia.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, right. And you see him, that he's assassinated him, that he never let go of it. And it's one of those things, but it's one of those things though, where it's really interesting to watch in the context of the Complete Epic or the saga, but it was a very rudimentary lesson when I was just starting to piece together what went into making movies about the decision process, because you could sit there and say, oh, that's an extra scene that I didn't see before. But then when you thought about it, you were like, yeah, but it really did kind of break up the flow. Like it happened. And I call out to that Michael scene having Fabrizio blown up. It's a callback to something that happened in the previous movie. It's a standalone thing. And then, of course, you could sit there and you could say, and I didn't notice that it wasn't there. Yeah. I didn't need to see him do that. And so it sort of bakes into your brain. Like sometimes you got to make these cuts to have the story just flow a little bit better.
Now, one thing about the Godfather Complete Epic, doing that was one of his conditions to directing Godfather Part 2. Because he had a horrible time directing the first Godfather. And Paramount wanted him to direct Godfather Part 2. And first he said, no, I don't want to direct it. Just let me produce, let me write it, let me produce, and let somebody else direct it. And he said, he's like, let Scorsese direct it. And Paramount Pictures said, no, it's either you or it's not happening. And he said, fine, I'll do it under these conditions. And I wrote them down because there were so many. He said he agreed under several conditions that the sequel be interconnected with the first film, with the intention of later showing them together, that he be allowed to direct his own script, The Conversation, that he be allowed to direct a production for the San Francisco Opera, and that he be allowed to write the screenplay for The Great Gatsby, all prior to production of the sequel for a Christmas 1974 release.
So the only thing on that where I have a question is Paramount could boss around the opera? Like, or
yeah, I have no idea.
Like,
maybe it just meant like he'd be allowed the time to do it. I'm not sure.
I see what you're saying. I see. Yes.
That's all that I gathered from it.
Wow. That's, but I mean, think about that. He does all of this. He negotiates all of this. He writes it. 2 years. It's 2 years between the movies. Nowadays, you can't get a sequel in less than 5 years because it, blah, 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 interconnected, blah, blah, stinger, like franchise. It's like, this is sitting in his head. Now, granted, he's still working.
Cinematic Universe.
Oh, yeah, God, exactly. Give it time. Give it time.
Please, no.
Now you can own it
if you say it.
On 8 VHS cassettes.
But, okay, so Godfather Part II filmed over 103 days, and Al Pacino was friggin' pissed. And he kept screaming, Serpico took 19 days. Apparently, Pacino was just a monster to deal with on Godfather Part 2. When Coppola gave him the script, he said, I'll only play it if you make all of these changes and you give me like a huge salary increase. And Coppola capitulated. He rewrote the script over one night and handed it to him the next day. And Pacino's like, fine.
And you know what's stunning about that? Because this is one little trivia tidbit I remember from reading the making of books for the first two and everything, is after the first table read for The Godfather Part II, apparently the cast all stood up and applauded. They basically gave Coppola a standing ovation because they did the table read and they just said, this is, how did you do this? Basically. They just regarded him as a wizard. And so just the idea that he made all of those changes and the script still turned out well enough for the cast to be that enthusiastic about it. Not be like, well, I have some notes, but everybody just stands up and applauds. Is like, yeah, let's film it. Sure. Let's do this. Crazy.
So Darren, what did you know about The Godfather Part II? Like what was in your brain from pop culture, from just being an American and loving film, but never seeing it? Like what was in your brain?
Very, very little. I mean, I knew that there was, the Godfather sequel. I didn't know how later it was filmed versus the first one. I didn't know it was going to go back and forth between young Vito and Michael. I mean, it's obviously a continuation of the story, like literally picks right up. And I feel like the dying in the bathtub scene, I had somehow seen that some random way, but that's literally it. Like nothing else came across in my absorbing film culture. No other scenes, no other. I mean, when we talked about this in The Godfather Part 1, I knew the horse head in his bed. I knew Offer confused and like the shootout at the toll booth and all that. I knew a lot more versus this. I was going in very blind, very much just, okay, here we go. And, oh, look, there's Mike. Oh, that's right. We're in Vegas. That's right. It's been a week or two since we watched Part 1, but very, very little going in.
So, Darren, you talked about the movie picking up right after the first one. So we start with the communion. Well, we start with young Vito, and then we move to the communion. So, John, how did you feel about the flashbacks? Let's talk about the flashbacks. Let's talk about De Niro. Let's talk about young Vito. How did you feel about seeing that journey from a young boy in Sicily, from Corleone, where his family's slaughtered and he has to go to America? Like, how did that resonate with you? Did you feel like it was a departure? Was it too much of a departure from the first one, or did you enjoy it right away?
I think I'm biased because this was the first one that I watched. Like it didn't strike. There was no way it was going to strike me as a departure. If I were to contextualize it, then I would say that it's actually probably the reason why this film works so well. despite being a sequel. And the reason it can stand alone just right from the first frame is it's not picking up with the events right after. It's bringing you back to it and starting the story over, which I think is very helpful, especially in this sort of order, because this movie comes out previous to the home video market and stuff like that. And there were two ways you could do it. Well, three ways. You could presume the audience knows everything and just goes with it. You could do a poor man's recap of things at the beginning somehow, or you could do what Superman 2, which I know wasn't 70s, but later, 1980 or whatever. But like, you could do what Superman 2 did, which is something I actually kind of hate most times, which is basically replay highlights of the first movie over the opening credits, which to this day drives me nuts when it's not done right.
Previously on Superman 2.
Exactly. So I think it's very good. I think it's the perfect way to shift gears and also bring in a new audience, because somebody might not have seen the first one, and that probably shapes how I approach sequels as well, because I'm a very big one for, if I come into a sequel, I should be able to come in cold, not having seen anything that came before, pick up and run with it and still enjoy it.
Darren, how did you feel being this being your first time?
Yeah, I definitely think it worked. I think the parts where he's in Italy fit because we had seen Michael there. So because we had already been back and forth between America and Italy, I think that flowed just the same. Yeah, the fact that it was in the past didn't really matter. The scenery was kind of the same, and you're starting to recognize locations and places. And then when he comes to America and the pieces starting to fall into place, because, yeah, it answers a question I didn't know I had, which was, how did, Vito become the Godfather? And and he starts his olive oil business, like legitimately an olive oil business, which will eventually not be so legitimate. But yeah, and how he just kind of starts by going after, I just called him the guy in the white coat because I could never remember. The hand, I guess, is
the black hand.
Black hand in the white coat with the white hat. But yeah, they do a great job of showing and not telling, because you kind of get it in two scenes. You get it in the part where Vito is making him an offer, but he's not really making him an offer. Like, I'm expecting him to, lay into the guy, but he's not. He just is, he's risking it, giving him less money than he's asking for. But the way he does it on his own and the respect he is showing, but also not, he eventually, shoots the guy, but then the second moment in the flashbacks that I think was really impactful was when the landlord he was basically haggling him and didn't want to, give the old lady, her place back, or all of those things. And he even kind of compromises a tiny bit, but then once he asks around town about who Vito is, it's like a night and day change, and he's giving it to her for free. Like, he just doesn't want to be on his bad side at all. And that's it. We got just enough, I think, in the flashbacks. I don't think it's ever superfluous. We even get him closing the loop with the man who killed his father and his family, which I had totally forgotten by that point. It's a long movie, Tristan. Did I mention it's a really long movie? I had forgotten that had happened. And fortunately, they say his name again, and there's enough to remind you in that moment, but I had forgotten that had happened.
When you texted me, like, after we watched The Godfather, you texted me, you're like, holy crap, I just looked at the running time of Godfather Part 2. And I said, I was like, yeah, it's essentially two movies in one. Yeah. Like, it's two movies intercut, but it doesn't feel like it. It feels like...
That's what the 2 stands for, 2 movies.
Yeah. It's interesting because, again, getting back to the stuff that was cut, but creeps its way back into the complete saga. Don Fanucci, you find out actually that Vito is the one that pieces together that Fanucci isn't really Black Hand. Now, that's not vital to this story, but Fanucci's whole his whole persona is based around the idea that the Black Hand backs him up. And you find out that he's an imposter, and Vito pieces this together. This is taken over from the book because he sees some kids attack Finucci, almost kill him, and nothing happens to them. And it's at that point where Vito's like, this guy's not really Black Hand. But again, it's not necessary to this. And if anything, cutting that makes Vito look like even more of a very serious person, because he doesn't, you don't have that sort of thing to lessen Finucci's menace at all. One thing I want to ask about, though, is this takes the tack of still referring to Vito as the Godfather, because in that opening flashback, the actual text on screen says the Godfather was born in Sicily. And I was wondering, is that any sort of disconnect at all? Because Michael is the Godfather now, but the movie makes it clear that this, Vito Andolini is the Godfather in the title, even though he's not the Godfather of the story, as it were. Is that any sort of disconnect?
I see what you're saying. I mean, yes, I've seen the first movie, but I don't necessarily feel that you would mistake Vito for Michael or for his story, especially because of the time. I mean, they do drop a date on it, like 1901 or something. And if you know that the main era of Michael as the Godfather is like the 40s, 50s, and so on, which makes more sense. So I don't necessarily feel that there was a disconnect.
Yeah, well, I mean more in the sense that, because we talked about this, how the Godfather is really Michael's story, but Vito is the Godfather. Well, Michael is the Godfather in this. He's the titular character, but the movie refers to Vito as the Godfather first. And so that's just sort of the disconnect. Not that there would be confusion between the characters, but it's almost as if the movie is having its cake and eating it too, by establishing that and saying, this little boy becomes the Godfather, but it's still, I guess what I'm getting at is, and I'm not digging the movie for this at all. It's just sort of like taking a temperature check sort of thing, where it's like, is it undercutting Pacino again to call Vito the Godfather first in this movie, even though, again, it's Michael's story?
I don't think so, because I think it's all about generation. It's generational blood and generational feud, generations ongoing. And, like we start with, the first generation of the Godfather, where Vito is born in Sicily, goes to America, starts his own business, starts his own family, and then passes it on to Mike. And we see how Fredo was passed over. He's the older brother, but he was passed over. Like we talk about, generational conflict and, being passed over and moving on to the next one. And then, like we see the first generation, and then we see the latest generation with Michael's son and his first communion. That, like, in quote unquote present day, like that's the first shot is Michael's son. And then, towards the end of the movie, or, towards the climax, we have Kay admitting that she had an abortion because she didn't want to continue this, to quote her, Sicilian thing. And I think that kind of goes into the movie about how you show the beginning, you show the latest, and you see Kay trying to deny the future. And that's kind of how I saw it.
But do you see, is there a commentary here about how, because Michael has that heart-to-heart with his mom, where he says, did Dad ever risk losing his family by being strong for them? And you realize, number one, in that moment, that Michael has misinterpreted what being strong means, being strong for your family. And additionally, this idea of the attempt to recreate the old ways was never going to work in America when it got to a larger sort of thing, where when it was the neighborhoods, you could recreate that old world feel because it was a much smaller environment. But now Michael is to quote Hyman Roth, were bigger than U.S. Steel. This isn't a family anymore. It's a corporation. And so there's this, to me at least, this seeming commentary on how the American way of life is not going to support the old ways. And it's not saying it's good or it's bad. It's just saying Michael is trying to recreate something that cannot exist. The sun was already setting on this way of life in the first movie. And Michael is just sort of this lone soldier standing, athwart history because it's different now. The world is changing, to use his own words.
I don't read it as Michael trying to recreate something. I see it as Michael trying to escape. What's going on? I'm
talking about the way that the family is structured, the way that this business of ours, La Cosa Nostra, the way that it operates. It's like Vito. We see. I think the biggest contrast we see is that Vito gets into this with noble intentions to succeed and protect, and he's protecting the widow. He's helping his friends. He's doing all of these illegal things, but there's an element of survival and preservation to it. Whereas the family is just a giant corporation. You have Pentangeli, who originally in the script was Clemenza, lamenting, saying, he's the one saying, that's why I love that Ritz cracker line, is Pentangeli is the old ways. He's an old guy. He's like, well, you're out here in Nevada. This isn't our way of life. Why aren't you in New York where we belong? Sort of thing. And so just thinking in terms of the fact that, and again, I'm not saying it's like a bad thing that these old vicious Sicilian mafia ways, couldn't sustain themselves sort of thing. But, there's an intimacy that's been lost to Michael's family. Right? Contrast the way Vito interacted with everybody to the way Michael interacts with everybody. Michael's very cold, right? Whereas Vito very much had that warm, we're not murderers, no matter what this Undertaker thinks, that sort of thing. And Michael is he's a cold, vicious person who at one point demands such fealty from his own sister, she has to kiss his ring. And it's like, I think that maybe I'm reading into it, but that's a commentary that it has grown on me in time.
No, okay, I can never pronounce his name right. Pentangeline, is that right?
Pentangeli. And
Pentangeli.
Yes.
Okay, Pentangeli.
Frankie Five Angels.
Can you imagine how, he's a great actor and gave a great performance. Didn't he get nominated for it?
I think he did.
Yeah, I think he's a highlight of the film. But can you imagine how much more impactful it would have been with Clemenza? I
absolutely can, and this is where the Godfather Part II sets up a history repeating with Godfather Part III. And I forget the actor's name who played Clemenza, wanted more money to come back, and
he wanted to write his own lines too.
Oh, okay. Well, that one I can totally understand why Coppola said you need to pound sand, but yeah, Coppola says no, you can't. We can manage without you. And this, I think, probably informs his estimation in The Godfather Part 3 to say to Robert Duvall, no, I'm not going to pay you the same as the principals. You're going to make less than Diane Keaton. And which is why Duvall was like, no, I'm not going to do Godfather Part 3. So
that kills me every time. Every time I see Part 3, I'm just like,
Hamilton did great. But again, if Pentangeli had been Clemenza, then the role is that much more impactful. And if Hamilton had been Duvall in Part 3, then there's more weight to some of the things that are happening. But having seen Part 2 first, there's no emotional disconnect for me. Pentangeli was always a part of the story. And I love Frankie Pentangeli. That character is so fantastic. My brother and I still make the joke about, the toast. I didn't come here to eat dinner and, and knocking the wine over and stuff like that. Pentangeli is a touchstone for me and my brother.
Darren. So the first Godfather had a lot of wheels within wheels, a lot of plot lines, a lot of backstabbing, a lot of, undercover double crosses and everything like that, triple crosses. So this amps it up to 11. How did you feel about the plot of the main storyline, the Nevada storyline with Michael, not Bobby D, but like with Nevada and Cuba and everything like that? Did you have a hard time following the plot? Was it pretty easy for you? Because even to this day, even though I've seen it countless times, I still have to pay attention. I'm like, wait, who are they going to see? That's right. Okay. All right.
Yeah, no, it was a little easier. I felt that maybe it was with the names were more distinctive, or the way they cut it was better. But like Roth, like that name stuck when they said it, and you're like, okay, this is Roth. He's the guy in Cuba. He's doing this. He's in, he starts in Florida and he's doing this, and you could track that. And then, like you said, like I'm gonna mispronounce it, but Pentangeli.
Yep. Perfect.
Yes. And that one was a little, I lost track of him for half a moment, where I didn't know who their star witness was, and then it's like, oh, it's that guy. I need my mugshot wall of like actors from this movie, but no.
Oh my gosh, so wouldn't that be such a great idea to have that on your wall? Because like, didn't they have that at the court proceedings? Like they had the graph with like the underboss. Oh my gosh, okay, I need to recreate that. That's going to be a summer.
It's your guide to get you through the Godfather saga 8 VHS tape. But no, overall though, I felt it worked. Maybe because less time passes. I mean, I don't really have a sense on how much time, but I mean, the first movie, it's like a decade or so goes by.
Yeah, it's a decade.
And so in this one, I mean, you pretty much have, stuff going on in Nevada, and then you have, the Cuban stuff, which I'm believing the night they get out is Fidel Castro's revolution. Is that what they're implying? Yeah. Okay. Yes. I don't know a ton of Cuban history, but that felt like it lined up where it should. And then, and then you have him come back once more with the being exiled and not allowed into Israel, and has to come back. And I think I might have seen that scene as well. Somehow I was like, oh, well, someone's going to be at the airport with a gun and just shoot him, and then they're going to die. Like, that just feels like the only way they're going to be able to take him out. Cause they talk a lot about, again, moving away from the old ways where, well, you have one guy who's on an army base, you have one guy who's surrounded by, marshals and all this stuff. And it's not as easy as it used to be. But I think, but overall it kind of came together. And again, I mean, talking about coming together with, that end shot with the, at the table, which is kind of just bringing it all back together, where it's obviously, I'm assuming all was shot new,
yes,
for this movie. But you have all his brothers, and you have Michael. And I was thinking they were going to do some sort of fade out. Like one by one, each person was kind of going to disappear as they had died in the first movie. But it worked out in its own way, as its own scene, where, fortunately Vito's off screen around the corner. But again, the fact is it ends on that shot of it's just Michael who's left, and he's all alone. And that's the point that they're coming across.
I'm glad you said something about, Vito's just around the corner. In that scene originally had Vito in it, but they couldn't get Brando to come back.
That's what I figured.
Oh, he agreed to come back, and he just didn't show up on the day.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
That's even worse. That's even worse. Can you imagine Coppola pulling his hair out, being like, "Dear." Yeah,
he had to rewrite it, and they filmed it the next day.
Well, the thing that I think is fascinating about that is that scene, I argue, is better because he's not in it. That
I totally agree.
Gutting, because it underscores that whole idea that Michael is always haunted by not just that decision, not just that moment in time, not anything. He's haunted by the memory of his dad. And because that's the gist of his conversation with his mother, is talking about how did dad keep it together? Why can't I be a great man like dad was? And it's this thing that he's always going to chase, and that's always going to be there. And I just think it's such a beautiful scene. I think it's probably one of the best scenes I've ever seen. And just the idea that Coppola rewrote it in a day. Like how because I know Sonny wound up having some of Vito's lines. And so you have James Caan delivering the lines the way Sonny would, as opposed to the way that Vito would.
Right.
And I think it also allows you to just preserve that memory, that idea. We walk away again at the end of this with a much softer vision of Vito because De Niro plays him so charismatically that it's fascinating because when you break it down, Vito is every bit as bloodthirsty and vicious as Michael is, but he never comes off that way. You know, there's this charismatic energy that comes off of him. Yeah, exactly. And Michael's just done away with the charm. He's simply cold.
One question, I'm assuming not, but was this scene then moved in the saga? Because technically it takes place before, but they still use it as a flashback.
Yes, they still use it. I mean,
I don't think it would work. It moved, but I was just curious because obviously timeline-wise, it's a moment that takes place earlier.
Yeah, and if they did move
That's a solid question, though.
Yeah, but if they did move it, it would have to exist literally between the end of Robert De Niro's storyline and the first scene in The Godfather. It'd be like, what the hell is this?
that would be such a disconnect.
Yeah. So, but even the fact that they brought back the actor who played Carlo, just everybody being there except
everyone's
for
there.
Vito.
And
Sonny, okay,
and it's only 2 years later, so it feels like this could have been shot during Godfather 1. Like it matches perfectly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's not like they've aged, 10 years in that amount of time. But Jimmy Caan, he demanded the same pay that he got for Godfather, and he got it.
Wow. Well, because he knows, like, you can't do the scene without this character, and
right.
It's for what, like 1/20th of the screen time of the previous movie.
I guess Brando was just holding out so that Superman could be the movie where he got paid the most amount of money per minute. Because I guarantee you his salary wasn't, honestly, probably Paramount's accountants, when Brando didn't show up, they were like, yes, we don't have to pay him. They probably saved like 10% of the budget in that moment.
The Brando budget.
Yes, exactly. So, Darren, I want to ask you, and Tristan, of course, as well. But
we don't care what Tristan says. Yes, I'm ready to listen to. No. What's your question?
Now, the score, right? Do you feel that there was anything additional about the score? Do you feel that there was anything that had, additional oomph or anything like that was particularly memorable? Is this the type of score you would listen to, or is this simply not really distinguishable from the first Godfather score?
I would say I felt and remember the score more in the flashback pieces. Now, that could be because they used it more in the flashback piece. I don't know minute for minute how balanced it was, but it felt, whenever they go into melody and when they go into just that general feeling of the score, it makes me think of Vito more than Michael, because in Michael's scenes, when the score does come in, it's usually just punching up a moment. Whereas I felt like it was the background for the flashback. That was New York in the 1900s. That was Sicily in the time of his birth. That it's underscored. And again, I might be remembering it incorrectly, but it feels like the score was almost always there, or at least it, is a melody in the background. And I'm not talking necessarily about the Godfather melody, which does come into play on the guitar. But a good score, a good use of the main theme again. But it definitely, I think, rang truer to the flashbacks than the more modern pieces. I mean, modern, quote unquote, as present day.
Right. Tristan, any take on the score?
Yeah, I absolutely love the score. It's iconic. It's hard for me to listen to it because I get so wrapped up in the imagery. It so evokes the image of the film, because like when I watch it, when I listen to it, I'm just imagining the movie that's going on. It's kind of like Star Wars. It's kind of like John Williams in Star Wars, where you hear the scene. You see, I'm mixing up my words here, but you listen to the music and you see the scene in your head while listening to it at the same time. That's kind of how I am with Nina Rota's, theme and music. It's beautiful. It's eerie. It's poignant, and yeah, that's my take on it.
What's interesting to me too is, and we talked about this, talking about the first one, is everybody wanted to take some sort of credit for The Godfather. And very notably, Robert Evans, the producer, at Paramount, was like, oh, well, I saved that cut. I made that movie work, and I'm the one that made blah, 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 blah. And the whole reason I believe that he's a liar or taking more credit than he deserves, or attempted to take more credit than he deserved, is the fact that nobody had that fight about The Godfather Part II. Everybody this is Coppola's movie. And the fact that nobody fought about this one, this seems to really put just that stamp, just end that conversation for everybody that wanted to take credit over Coppola for the first Godfather. He makes The Godfather Part II. How can you with a straight face say, oh yeah, sure, he did The Godfather Part II, fine. But I'm the one that saved it. It's like, the one constant between these two things is Francis Ford Coppola. So I'm going to have to say he had a lot to do with how this turned out. So,
in 2 years.
Yeah. God, again, how directing a movie between it? How do you do that?
So
I have trouble paying bills on time some months.
So on one side of the scale, do we have Coppola in 2 years going from Godfather 1 to Godfather 2? And then the other end of the scale, we have Cameron with how many years between Avatar and Avatar 2? I think that is our scale.
Avatar 2 has to be it. If it is anything less than the greatest film that's ever been created in the history of cinema, he has completely whiffed on this one at this point.
Now, so better than Godfather Part 2 is what you're saying.
It has to be better than The Godfather. It has to be as good as The Godfather Part 2 meets Star Wars, meets Citizen Kane, meets Touch of Evil, meets, let's pull a couple other ones off the shelf there. It has to be a cinematic experience equivalent to all of the thousands of cinematic experiences I've had in my lifetime to justify the amount of time between movies at this point, when again Coppola can do The Godfather and The Godfather Part 2 with the conversation in between in 2 years and direct the San Francisco Opera. So there you go.
Now we will say, listeners, as the time of this recording, it is 2021, 2021, and we have yet to get Avatar Part 2. So we don't know when it's coming out.
Yeah,
but we'll see.
All right, before we close, John, Darren, I want to ask you guys a questions about Hyman Roth. So the actor who played Hyman Roth, this is really just an aside, the actor who played Hyman Roth actually got sick during production. And so...
a little method acting right there.
No, Coppola wrote it into the script that he was an ailing old man.
Yep.
And so they're like, that's why he can lay down and look tired all the time.
That's smart.
Brilliant.
And absolutely, you never would know it. It totally works. It feels like it's intentional. But I want to ask you guys, okay, so Hyman Roth's motivation behind trying to assassinate Michael. So we have that big speech in the hotel room where Roth says, somebody killed Mo Green. We all know that he knows. He's like, somebody killed Mo Green, but I didn't care because it's business. It's business. Now, if he didn't care, why did he try to kill Michael and, get out of a major deal that was going to bring him a lot of money? John, I want to know what you have to say about that.
He didn't say he didn't care. He said, I didn't ask. You don't ask because that's just business. And obviously the hit on Michael had a dual purpose. He could get revenge for his friend Mo Green, and Fredo then gets installed. The same reason that Sollozzo tried to assassinate Vito was because Sonny was hot for the deal. And Fredo would have been a puppet. And Hyman Roth could have controlled Fredo easily. And so you assassinate Michael, Fredo becomes the head of the family. which is what he always wanted because he felt looked over because he's smart. He's not dumb like everybody says. He's smart.
Is he though?
Oh, yeah. I think Fredo has a little problem with honesty with himself in that scene, but okay. But yeah,
I want to talk about that scene though. I want to talk
one of the best scenes in the history of
that scene. Also, the body position, the direction, the blocking, just like how like he's laying down and he's in a lounge chair and he's screaming about being smart. And it's totally like it's the weakest position in theater and film that you could ever have. And yet he's like struggling to kind of like keep himself up and he doesn't stand up. That's the thing about Fredo. He struggles to stand up, but yet he's screaming the entire time.
Yeah. John Cazale, we've gone back and forth about how to pronounce the last name. Who knows? The absolute the treasure trove, the depth, the spoils of all of the absolute masterful performances from top to bottom in this film. And you can point to so many of them. And you come out of this film and he winds up being forgotten sometimes, I think, as does Duvall, as does everybody else, because they think of De Niro, who won the award. And but the idea that Al Pacino didn't get the award for this. I haven't even seen Harry and Tonto, but I can guarantee you that there is no way there was any better. I'll watch every film that was released in 1974, every single one, and I promise you, I will never find a
conversation. And
there you go, exactly.
Godfather Part II.
But seriously, I will watch every film released in 1974 and every television show, and I will promise you that not one single performance was better than Pacino's, and that Cazale deserved more recognition for just that scene alone. The fact that I'm sorry to go on and on, but like seriously, as you rightly point out, Tristan, that scene is amazing. Like that is the type of scene you show in a class when you want to show people how to act. You say, okay, watch this 100 times. Try to figure out everything that they did to make that work. Then you have an inkling of what you might be able to attempt to do. And the fact that these two actors then go on to do Dog Day Afternoon, which I think is the next year, is ridiculous. Again, I've tipped my hand as we come closer to the rating section.
Three is what I'm getting. Something in the middle.
3.5, maybe.
It struggles for a 2.5. It's a little bit long, like you said there. So.
One per VHS tape.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now you talked about like we talked about that scene and everything like that. Like we're not sponsored by Screenbinder in any way, but one of my favorite YouTube channels is Screenbinder. Everyone should go to YouTube and search Screenbinder because they do a lot of Godfather stuff and they analyze scenes and show you, like positions, blocking, cinematic techniques, cinematography, direction, everything like that. So like it really is it's very cool and eye-opening to show how much thought is put in behind these scenes. It's not just setting up a camera, getting a 2-shot and a wide. It's amazing the depth that they go into, and it really gives you a greater appreciation for what Coppola did in order to convey these emotions. Now, I think we're rounding third here. I think we've landed at the end. We could go on for hours and hours and hours talking about this film because it's The Godfather Part II. But Darren, I would love to know the rating you have for this. This is some people say it's better than the first one. Some people say this is the greatest movie of all time. It's right next to or even exceeds Citizen Kane. So I want to know, how big of balls do you have to rate this lower than 5? But I want your honest answer.
Oh, I'm not going to give it a 5, but I think that
you're going to get a fish in the mail.
No, I'm going to give this a 4 along with Godfather 1. Not that I don't. It's really hard for me to judge them against each other, because I don't have that nostalgia piece. And I honestly feel that, now ask me the same question again 10 years from now when I've watched this a couple of times. But after one viewing of each, it just feels like one big story. And and also the genre is not my favorite. Like, I'm not a big crime mob drama type person, so I don't know as much about what makes a good that kind of a film. But as far as like we mentioned when we talked about Godfather 1, and you're talking about these YouTube channels that are talking about blocking and writing and pacing, again, it's Coppola. You can look for those things because they're purposeful. It's not just, oh, I wonder why Vito's around the corner of this table discussion. It's like, no, there's a reason. There's a reason that it ends with Michael sitting there alone. There's a reason you have the duality here, and you have, just everything is so well put together. So for the story it's telling, the story of Vito and Michael, yes, it's long. Yes, I'm popping in my second VHS tape, but it's again 74 for Coppola. Man, he is just taking, and it is really sad almost to see how his career then did start to kind of tumble a little bit as he had more studio issues and other things like that. And I wish he had gotten more of a not necessarily a Lucas treatment, but like just give this man money and let him go do his thing, because he can do his thing. But so I'm going to give it 4 lonely boat trips.
Too soon.
I mean, he had to know. I mean, come on. Like,
Fredo knew.
His son is getting taken away to Reno at that moment. Yeah. It's like, buddy, you're going to start singing your Hail Marys and all that. It's like, no, buddy, you're not coming back from this boat.
No, Fredo knew. Fredo knew that was his last boat trip for sure. I will also say, that Coppola's, quote unquote tumble or whatever, we'll talk about how it's not this movie, but Apocalypse Now might be the one that breaks him. Because that one's got a really interesting production history. And you might notice he comes out with The Godfather, The Conversation, The Godfather Part II, 1972 and 1974. Apocalypse Now takes a little bit longer to make. Just going to throw that out there. A lot longer to make. But you have here, in my opinion, a film that defines film itself, that is so magnificently crafted. There are movies that I watch today that are an hour and 40 minutes long, and I find myself getting antsy about an hour and 20 minutes in and saying, okay, I get the point. Yeah, let's wrap it up. Okay, yeah, Cap's Shield is special. Great. Did we need to be 2 hours and 12? Maybe not.
Any hit that you can make.
Oh, God, Marvel. Absolutely. I live to do it. Thor Ragnarok sucks. And we have this film that is more than 3 hours with an intermission where I am spellbound from beginning to finish. And keep in mind, I might have been 12, 13. It's around that age. I forget the specific year. But to be able to capture that boy and make him pay attention to the point where it becomes and remains one of his favorite films of all time. And the fact that rewatching it this time, I'm so gutted at the end of the film because of the statement, this absolute spiritual depletion of Michael Corleone and this absolute emptiness. He's dead at the end of this movie. He's got nothing. Everything is gone. Every dream he ever had is gone. And that flashback where he's going to go off and he's not going to follow that path, where he's going to be the war hero, where he is going to find the American girl that is going to love him for being that good old-fashioned American boy. And he's sitting there and in that moment looking back and realizing that you can't get it back. That everything he's done has resulted in nothing. absolute despair and emptiness is one of the most, I know it's a downer of an ending, but it's such a wake-up call every time you watch it that you only get one shot. And if you screw it up, you don't get to do it over again. And we'll eventually, I'm sure, talk about The Godfather Part 3 and, changing opinions around that. But, how many stars do I give it? I 5 billion stars. All the stars in the galaxy. It's no accident that on Letterboxd this is listed as one of those 4 slots for favorite films of all time. Godfather Part 2 is sitting there. It will never ever leave that list for any reason. So that's my rating.
You talk about Michael being dead inside at the end and having that gut punch. Originally, the film was supposed to end with his son at 18 years of age coming to him and saying, "I'm not following in your footsteps and I want nothing to do with you."
Mm-hmm.
And then walking away. That's why he has a little bit of crow's feet at the end, a little bit of gray hair, but Coppola ran out of light. He missed the light of the day, and so they weren't able to film it. And Coppola's just like, it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Day 500 of production. I decided to stop filming without the light.
And that's even more of a gut punch if you think about it, but yeah, so with my rating, I mean, I'm like John here. It's an amazing movie. It's a beautiful movie. I can't give it 5 stars. I want to give it 10 stars. I want to give it 20 stars. It's one of, if not the greatest film ever made. And I know that some people love to hate it just because they say it's overrated. And whenever a movie reaches this great of access to filmdom, that could be the douchiest thing I've ever done.
Probably.
It becomes fashionable to say it's not that great. And
did not care for The Godfather. Did not.
It insists upon itself. It insists upon itself. I enjoy the money pit. Yes. So there we have it. Thank you everybody for listening so much. We really appreciate it. We love that you guys listen. We love that you download. We love that you subscribe. Please, if you can, take the time to give us a rating at Apple Podcasts. It helps us going and let us know that you like what we're doing. And it's a way for you to talk to us. And people have been emailing us, and I want to say that we can't reply to everybody, but we want to say that you are being heard, and I am writing down a list of every director that you're suggesting for us to move on to. And next week, we're moving on to Apocalypse Now. And that's going to be our last Coppola movie for the time being, because I really want to tackle 90s Coppola so that we can get to Godfather Part 3. But we're going to be tackling Apocalypse Now. And you can find me at The Inside Robin on Letterboxd and on Twitter. And please watch out for my Star Trek show with Charlene Schmidt called Lower Decks. It's called Second Contact. If I could actually tell you the name of my own show, it's called Second Contact, a Lower Decks podcast, a commentary podcast. And also, Darren, where can we find you?
They can find me at drsci-fi.com, DRSCIFI, or listening here on the network on 2 other shows, both City Alpha 3, our Star Trek podcast, and Maker's Method number 56 in the category of hobbies. Sure, that's a thing. We'll take it. So as we talk about making and our methods.
And
John,
of course, you can find me as Kessel Junkie out there on your social network of choice, KESSELJUNKIE. And you can find me here on the network co-hosting a show called Aggressive Negotiations, which is a Star Wars podcast, which has nothing to do with organized crime, but maybe, just maybe, we'll talk about the Hutts sometime soon, because now I'm in the mood. But that is where you can find me. I would love to connect with anybody. And as you can guess, I would gladly go on and on about The Godfather Part 2 for ages and ages.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And as we said before, we're going to be viewing and discussing Apocalypse Now next week. So please tune in, and thank you for your time and for opening the door to House of Coppola.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.